Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Lowell. And we're here with the Barry Farber for the launching of the Laura and Lowell Show, New York's Emotional Emergency Room. This is our first interview since I've come back to New York from Jerusalem after the last one we did on May 14, 2012 with Dr. David Hellerstein of Columbia University. And I wanted that the first interview when I come back to New York to get our show off the ground, I've been in Israel all this time, would be with my mentor, the Barry Farber. I was Barry's producer for his radio show from 1988 to 1989. Barry told me at that time, you should have a show of your own. Well, I do. It's just 25 years later, but here I am again, like I never left. And Laura, I'm handing this over to you so you and Barry can talk directly.
Okay, Barry, it's so wonderful, and thank you for having us today. And I'm honored to meet you. I've heard so much about you.
Well, Laura, you've destroyed my Air Force on the ground. I don't have any stories that can compare to yours, and you and I've only talked for 5 minutes. Wow. Your mother in the rodeo, you lived in Sarasota, you're a circus girl, you knew Emmett Kelly, the most famous clown in the world.
Lou Jacobs. And I was a circus performer. I had the opportunity to go on the road and get it out of my blood, as they say. And it's once it's in your blood, you always keep that sawdust in the blood. But I had to go and live it and experience it, and I had the opportunity to do it, and I'll always have those special memories. And having the time that I did was a real learning experience, but most of all, being a storyteller and hearing stories like yours are rich, and I'm so honored to be here with you. Can you tell me a little bit about your...
at the moment, you still got me trapped.
I do?
You got me trapped in the circus and in the past. This must have been before you were born.
Okay.
They speak of this as the day the clowns cried. It was one of the biggest home front tragedies during World War II.
Wow.
There was a circus fire in Hartford, Connecticut.
I know about that fire.
During the war.
Yes.
Lost over 100 people.
It was sad.
And they call it fittingly the day the clowns cried.
That's right. Well, my friend's father was there at Lou Jacobs when that fire took place, and they never found a little girl that was lost in that fire, and they honored her. And I always remember that story because the circus friends I have are like family to me in my life. As I told you, I lost my mother, and my dad died in his 60s, and the circus always, they were there from the time I was a little girl and growing up, and then going into the business and trying it out, which I had that opportunity to do for a year. But then I decided I wanted to go to college.
You know, stories lead to stories in a healthy interview environment.
Thank you.
And this one is very healthy.
Thank you.
I'm remembering, I think the first year I was on the air.
Right.
This is my 53rd year on the air.
Oh my goodness.
But my first year on the air, a woman named Connie Clausen, who was a circus lady, wrote a book with a very apt title. I bet you Lowell doesn't understand this, but you will.
Okay.
It's a circus cliche. Ready?
Okay.
The title of the book was, I Love You, Honey, but the Season's Over.
I know that book. I do, and I own a copy of it.
No kidding. Well, Connie was a guest on my show.
Was she?
And I'm just trying to think. You know, as we're talking now, we're expecting the arrival of a royal baby.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, very special.
My wife, who is my producer, was helping me out in the kitchen here the other day. And she said, hurry, Barry, hurry, the elephant's about to be born.
I love it.
I thought that was a cruel thing to be calling a royal baby.
I know.
But no, split the ticket. There was an elephant being born at that instant in the Houston Zoo.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
And,
this is so special.
And Sarah didn't want to miss the
Yes.
video birth
Oh, how
of
beautiful, Barry.
the elephant. Now, I think when an elephant's born, it's 3 times my size to begin with. But what interested me was I think I remember, is this possible, in that book, I Love You Honey But the Season's Over, I think Connie was describing the birth of an elephant, but that couldn't happen. Could a circus elephant ever give birth? She was describing in great detail what the birth of an elephant is.
It's so beautiful. My friend Luann Jacobs has 3 elephants, and I just saw her in Newark, New Jersey on the Universal Soul Circus, and the elephants are amazing animals. And there's a book called Water for Elephants. I own a copy of that book about a man in a nursing home who runs away from the nursing home to go back to the circus that he belonged to. That he carried the water for the elephants, and he told his story, but nobody believed him until he went back, and he was missing in action in the nursing home, and they found him at the circus and said, "You really did carry water for the elephants."
We've seen pictures of elephants marching in a line.
Yes.
And each elephant has his trunk around the tail.
Yes.
Of the elephant.
Really?
Yes. That's the way they stay together.
I thought that was a Disney invention. I didn't know that was real.
It's real.
But a great naturalist named Roger Paris took me out to a game park in New Jersey. It's closed now.
Okay.
At midnight. A big flashlight.
Right.
Industrial strength flashlight.
Right.
And we heard rustling in the leaves, and there was a line of maybe 18 elephants, and sure enough, each one was holding the trunk, the tail of the elephant in front with his trunk. I thought that was a cute little Disney trick. I didn't know that was real.
It's real, Barry. It's real as it's ever going to be. And I'm so glad you understand and appreciate the elephants, because they're beautiful creatures and they never forget. Once they see you, they know you and they don't forget you. And their eyes are so beautiful.
On my desk now, I got a piece I will read on the air one night, soon if the world ever quiets down. There was a white man living in Africa, and he was known for his kindness to elephants.
Oh.
Now this seems impossible, but as my favorite comic, Jerry Clower, says, he used to say when he lived, "If I'm lying, I'm dying." Here was this man like a philanthropist for elephants.
Oh, I love it.
Contributed and took care of them. Now listen to this. Who died? Elephants came from 3 days away. The distance it would take an elephant 3 days to walk.
Yes.
Elephants just came and sat.
Oh, how beautiful.
You understand this?
I
came
understand.
And stayed, and then at the right moment, they disbanded and went back. But that was just so human. I was
They never forget, Barry. And I'm tearing up just hearing this, because I know they haven't forgotten me since I was a little girl, since Luann had these elephants. And when I go to the circus every year and see her elephants, I visit with them, and they give me such love. And I rode them this season.
You've ridden an elephant?
Yes, I got on. Luann said, "You got to ride the elephant." So I did in Newark, New Jersey. And I got on the elephant, and I took photos on the elephant. And I'll send you one to have of me. I'm riding an elephant, so you can see.
Weren't you afraid you were going to get stomped?
No. I guess, like I said, I never lost that sawdust. It's in my blood, Barry. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful hearing this story.
When Barry was a little bit younger, you were a boxer and a wrestler, right? In high school and college?
Every Jewish boy who grew up where I grew up was a boxer and a wrestler.
Wow.
I used to say that, and I felt guilty of that. North Carolina was a very pro-Semitic state, if you'll put up with that. Matter of fact, Lowell...
I'm Aryeh to Barry. He remembers me.
That's right.
When I lived here, I used my Hebrew name. Now that I started my show, I use my English name I was born with. But Lowell or Aryeh, it's the same thing. It means adult male lion, and sometimes I feel like an adult male lion.
So I have the right to call you Aryeh,
you sure
right?
do.
Well, you wrote a book, and there's some of the most valuable information in that book. Who could possibly know, except Aryeh Gallin, that there are Muslim-dominated countries in Black Africa where the government subsidizes Christians who want to go to the Holy Land?
That's Nigeria.
That's Israel. Can you believe that?
I couldn't believe all sorts of things until I researched it, such as that there are daily flights from Tel Aviv to Tashkent, the capital of Israel's powerful ethnic Turkic Sunni Muslim majority ally in Central Asia, Uzbekistan. That's where Samarkand and Tashkent and the Silk Road are. That's right. And I took 3 years to write that book, and Barry had me on his show twice. And as he said in the introduction to the second interview, he said, and he was talking with his wife, he said, "You'll appreciate the humor that when I invited Aryeh on the show the second time, how many authors of books would say, 'But Barry, I have nothing new to say. We discussed everything in the first interview.'" He thought that was he found that very entertaining. So, yeah, that's true. I wrote the book before I got into acting, and again 2 years ago in the summer in a new beginning with film. I took 3 years to write this book. That's true, I did write it. Now getting ready the 3rd edition. I like to do research.
Great accomplishment.
And when I came to see Barry and got the privilege of working for him for a year, it was like meeting someone from Noah and his sons who knew the 70 languages of the 70 nations of the world that came from Noah and his sons. Barry had dictionaries from all sorts of languages from ethnic groups I never heard of, and he was pretty fluent in all of them. He liked language, so he could talk to people. And he was talking to people from all over the world. And oh, we have a message for you from one of your admirers. We met Robert Baldridge, who's a photojournalist who's been published by the New York Times and Town and Country and other leading magazines and newspapers. And he said when he was a boy growing up in Greenwich, or was it Stanford? He said every night when I couldn't sleep when I was 7 or 8 years old, I listened to Barry Farber. He said, "You're going to interview the Barry Farber. Please give him my love and admiration." And how many people I haven't heard this from, like my friend Phil Chernovsky at the Israel Center, and he says, during the 6-Day War, I listened to Barry. I went to war with Barry.
You know, the 6-Day War, obviously, we know the importance in history. We know the importance in the Middle East. We know the importance for Israel. Let me tell you about the importance of the 6-Day War to me. At that moment, I had just taken over the all-night show on WOR. WOR had a superstar. Talked about an elephant. He was a giant in the Long John Neville.
Wow.
And he was the superstar on WOR. He got bought off by WNBC to do the same all night. So WOR threw me in, and it was very, very lopsided. Long John had the whole audience. Now, when the 6-Day War started, we did nothing but. We had Jews, Israelis, we had Arabs, we had the ones who now call themselves Palestinians, wall to wall to wall for the entire duration of the war. And Long John, for reasons nobody knew and will never know now, Long John refused to talk about the 6-Day War. So we got when New York City has more Jews than Jerusalem. But we got the entire audience swinging over to us for that whole week, beginning June the 5th, 1967. And after it was over, we kept half of it. So the Six-Day War took a lopsided arrangement like this and made it equal. And Long John and I, who remained great personal friends forever, we slugged it out. We slugged it out
Yes,
for the audience. That's what the Six-Day War did.
I want to add a note here about Long John Neville. First of all, one thing after the other. You're talking about elephants. I got to be in some amazing student films. And one of them, which was my first casting to be the lead role, and it's a 3-minute film. But either your film is good or not, and whether it's made by students or not, that's irrelevant. Albert Einstein was working in the patent office in Bern when he came up, scribbled something called E=mc² on a piece of paper. Max Planck published it. And the Wright brothers, who were quote-unquote only bicycle makers, only made the first flying vehicle in history since Icarus. And so this film I was in was called Elephants, by a very talented young filmmaker at the NYU Tisch School of the Arts. In 6 weeks I was in 11 productions in October to November 2011. 8 of them were students at the Tisch School of the Arts, and 2 at the New York Film Academy, the very first one of which just had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. That was the first time it was ever filmed. But coming back to Long John Neville, when I was about 10 years old, my neighbor Lloyd Auerbach, who lives in California now I think, his father, who's no longer alive, was a producer at NBC Sports, and said to Lloyd, get some of your friends together. Long John wants to talk to little kids, what kids think about the world. So I got to be on Long John Neville's show on NBC.
Really? Wonderful.
That was the night all your viewers ran over to Long John Neville, Larry. Because I was there with Lloyd and Stevie Weiner and some other friends. Mr. Auerbach drove us in. My first radio appearance, and I loved it, was at the age of 10. Then I had my own radio show in college. Then I worked for Barry, who said you should have your own show. And now I do with Laura. So let's go back to where we were. You went over after the Six-Day War, where Phil Chernovsky, I felt, was listening to you. He went to war with you every night. You were on WOR, and Long John had gone over to NBC.
That's right.
So you're going down memory lane with Long John and elephants and Laura and the circus. I know less about the circus than I know about films. My kids just said, Lowell, you're raw talent, we didn't expect you to know anything, but you got to watch some movies. There's been some movies since Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. And I tell them when I get a paid sabbatical, all I'm going to do is eat chocolate chip cookies, drink coffee, black coffee, no milk or sugar, thank you, and watch movies all day long.
You know, you mentioned Einstein. When Einstein came over here, settled with Princeton, and he lived south of here, Princeton, middle of New Jersey. And just south of there, in Hunterdon County, you know the publication Who's Who in Jewish America, there was an industrialist, and he got himself a very good write-up to all of his boards of directors and companies he'd started, and he went nuts. He was so angry, and he held a press conference, and he said, look, what right is that rag got to write me up? I may have been born Jewish, but I've never lived a Jewish day in my life, and my new young wife didn't even realize I was born Jewish, and she's very upset. And the Jews themselves of that era and area were very upset by this reaction, all except one, Albert Einstein, his neighbor. Einstein smiled. Imagine that smile, his face looked like an unmade bed. Einstein said, you see, that's the strength of the Jewish people. All the cowards run away.
This is true.
Great story, Barry. I love it.
So, Barry, when did you decide, or was it before you were born, that you wanted to be on radio? You've been on 53 years, since 1950. You're the longest running...
1960.
1960. You are the longest running radio talk show host in U.S. history. You were just honored at the Paley Center, that was a few years ago, for the 50th anniversary of you being on the air. And you just keep going strong. When did you know you wanted to be on radio?
Well, I think during World War II, it was so very, very exciting to be pre-tuned and to know what was going on. Not all pre-tunes knew what was going on. Most Jewish pre-tunes, I promise you, knew what was going on during World War II. And we had no television then, but the radio report, Edward R. Murray, this is London. And Gabriel Heater, there's good news tonight. How could you not be infected right out of midair by all of these great personalities, bringing the actuality of the world to you?
That's telling stories, Barry, bringing it to life.
And that's where you got the radio bug, listening to them about World War II.
Well, I couldn't imagine anybody wanting any other profession if you could manage to get into broadcasting.
And how did you manage to get into it? What was the first door you knocked on where you got your first show?
Not a very glorious story. When I was driving down Madison Avenue, back in the days when Madison Avenue was two-way.
Wow.
And the car in front of me got sideswiped gently by a bus. Now, there wasn't much damage, but there was a fender scrape. And I was the only real witness because I was the car right behind. So I got out to give the driver my name and address. And the bus couldn't go. It had to wait for a policeman to come and file a report. Who should get off the bus but my buddy from the wrestling team at the University of North Carolina, Winder Hughes. And we hugged, and I said, Winder, jump in, I'll drive you wherever you're going. And he said, what are you doing in town? I'm looking for a job. He said, what? I said, you know, now they call it media, then they called it communications. I said, you know, radio, television, newspapers, magazines. He said, well, call my fraternity brother, Charlie Norton. I said, Wanda, I never really knew Charlie. He said, who did that lighting to hear from? They called this the old school time. So he was a unit manager at NBC, and I called him. And he spoke as though he'd been waiting for my call for a year and a half. He said, Very Farber, where are you? I said, well, I'm in New York. He said, no, where are you right now? I said, I'm on the corner of 5th Avenue and 50th Street.
Yeah.
He said, well, stay right there. I'll get somebody to finish my shift, and we'll go to my apartment, and we'll get a 6-pack of beer, and we'll get some yellow pads, and we'll plot a job search for you. And he did. He took me to Bill Burns, who ran Jones Beach Summer Theater for Robert Moses, whose names may be long forgotten, but they shouldn't be.
That's right.
And then Bill Burns said, you strike me as a Tex McCrary type. And the guy who runs his operation is a young man of that your age named Bill Sapphire. And we were very young at that age. This is the Bill Sapphire, who was the superstar columnist of the New York Times. I could not get, forget job, I couldn't get a job interview because I had not done, oh, I know you'll appreciate this, I know nothing about your background. I could not, I didn't have, I didn't do the right thing. I didn't go from college or the Army to my hometown paper, and then after a year and a half to the Associated Press Bureau in my state capital, and then to a television or radio newsroom 180 miles closer to New York. You understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
I hitchhiked across Europe. I went to the Soviet Union on my own. I shipped out with the Norwegian Merchant Marine. Well, Bill Sapphire loved what it was. Oh, and a PR, the owner of an employment firm in public relations, in the public relations field. He explained to me patiently why he couldn't risk his reputation sending me out on a job interview because of the so-called crazy things that I had done. Well, Bill loved all that. He said, you see that door? That's McCrary's office. My job is to keep people out of there. He said, I send in one per year, and you're the one I'm sending in this year.
That's beautiful, Barry.
So that's how I got
You went in the door and then...
Like you. The two of us started as producers, you and I.
Yeah, we were meant to meet each other, you see. It's all...
Very special.
Like Robert Oldham says, serendipity.
Serendipity.
I'd say the force is with you.
That's right.
So that's how it happened. Yeah, 25 years ago, I was working here for a year. Barry had his office in his home. Most of the producers had desks next to each other at WMCA. I had a room to myself, one office, which was nice to have the whole room. It would have been nice to have a little company. It was a little bit of a monastic existence. But I got to work for the Barry Farber, who told me two things. First of all, he said, okay, pal, when you don't know, the Talmud says he was ashamed will not learn, fine, so you should say you don't know, but you don't have to sound like you should get a Nobel Prize because you don't know, okay, you don't know, fine. And the second thing he would tell me, repeatedly, was, just remember, pal, in this business, you don't normally start off as producers of New York radio shows, but there's nothing really normal about you in your life, so of course that's quite characteristic. So now I'm hearing how Barry got his first job, and yes, it sounds very familiar. Did you ever have a circus people on your show like Laura, which is Laura's World? I didn't know anything about circuses before we met each other and decided to have this show.
I did, and I'll tell you, I have principles against needless danger. Some of my best friends and best guests have been in the circus, and they've put their lives at risk needlessly to me. I don't throw ashtrays at them. I don't insult them. But I just say, wow, don't ever let a 26-year-old clergyman on the floor of a church or a synagogue on Wednesday night, don't ever let a young clergyman say, we're all the same. We are not all the same.
That's right, Barry.
You'll never get me up on one of those typos. Crazy. So I am not against risk.
Right.
I had twice put myself in harm's way for my country and for freedom. But to risk your life, you know, in an exhibitionist way. Who was the guy? One of the Melendez.
Did you see that?
That's Laura's friend,
At
Nick
the Grand
Melinda.
Canyon.
He just walked across the Grand. I didn't watch it. I couldn't watch it.
Well, I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it either.
Oh.
It was very exciting and it's scary, I know. But when I grew up watching circus performers practice walking the wire and what goes into it, the concentration and the focus, and
He's not just your friend, you worked with
well,
the Melendez.
I didn't work with that family. I worked with another family that I traveled with.
Oh.
They're a big family.
I
There's
see.
many different
Within the Walenda
family
clan.
clan.
Oh, okay, I see now.
Once upon a time, my producer at the time and I were walking through Schubert Alley, you know, the theater,
yes.
where Lowe's name will soon be emblazoned.
With Laura,
Big letters,
for our show.
And we saw a guy who was cute as a speckled puppy under a red wagon. He looked like a little cherub. And he was on a unicycle.
Okay.
And juggling while on a unicycle, and I said he might make a good radio show. And I got his name, and I called him, and he was from France, and we did a good radio show.
That's wonderful, Barry.
Now turn the page. A little over a year later, I got awakened in the morning by the morning man at WOR, John Gamble.
Okay.
He said, Barry, about a year and a half ago, you had Philip Petite on the air. I said, yeah, a little bit private. But you know, I worked late.
Right, right.
Our show was all night long. I cut more people up late than Mexican food.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
That's wonderful,
I said,
Barry.
yeah, John, I remember Philip Petite. He said, well, don't you know what he just did? I said, no. He said, he just walked illegally
Right.
from one of the World Trade Center towers to the other.
True.
Strung his own wire and had his own crew. Holy knuckles. So I ran downstairs and to the office, and I got Philip Petite's number, and John interviewed him. But can you imagine here? I interviewed him because he could stay on a unicycle and not fall.
Amazing.
I thought that was impressive. I didn't know he was going to walk across from one World Trade Center. Oh.
He's a resident and artist in St. John the Divine, and he uses
you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yes, I know. He practices in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. That's where he's an artist in residence.
Laura, how many years you, like Barry, Barry was a Norwegian merchantman, and you left home at 16, and you worked as a rodeo cowgirl. How many, as a circus aerialist, how high up in the air were you doing that, whatever you call it?
Well,
I mean, it's not pole dancing, it's string dancing, or what do you call it?
it's called the Spanish Web.
The Spanish Web. So you're up on a rope, what, 60 feet in the air?
It's about 30 feet.
That's enough.
Right.
30 feet is plenty.
But when you spoke, Barry, of the unicycle, I assisted when I first went into the circus professionally and went on the road. I worked with a Czechoslovakian circus performer who rode a unicycle. I was his assistant, and I would get on the unicycle and do different tricks on the unicycle, and he also rode the unicycle on the high wire.
Oh no!
Oh yes, and juggled, and it was amazing. It was interesting part of my life when I experienced that, with learning circus arts and telling now the stories of the circus to the seniors in the nursing home is a beautiful thing, because so many people I've met have never been to a circus ever in their life, and I'm just amazed by that. After growing up around it and experiencing it, people want to know what a circus is like. And I tell them, and they love it, and I bring the circus to them.
We're all very physical people. Laura has worked as a rodeo cowgirl. Her parents were rodeo people. They knew Roy Rogers personally.
My grandfather used to shoe Roy's horses.
He shoot Roy's horses?
Yes.
So you've been a rodeo cowgirl, a circus aerialist. Barry's been a boxer and a weightlifter. I is a little bit of a late bloomer in the last few years. Bodybuilding, tree climbing, and gymnastics. Yeah, tree climbing. Why? Because as Tony Horton, who calls himself Muscle Confucius, who I admire greatly, says, muscle confusion, every time you climb a tree, every tree is different. So each morning when I go out in Jerusalem to the gymnastics bars, which is simply the bar that holds up the swing, I climb a different tree. This is the Monday tree, this is the Tuesday tree, the Wednesday tree. And sometimes I'll say good morning to people and they'll look around because they look, yes, I'm up in the tree. And there you, like Barry said about unnecessary danger, the danger when you get too comfortable with danger is, then it's dangerous because you're up there in the tree and you're not afraid anymore, and if you make a misstep, you fall from up there in the tree, you may regret it. So we're all very physical people who are into doing things.
Let me just give you the take-home lesson here so it doesn't get lost. Don't ever forget this. I'm talking to the audience, anybody who might have aspirations towards show business. Never forget probably the best cartoon there ever was. I think it was an Esquire, and there was a stage. Nobody in the middle of the stage, but on one end was the most spectacular acrobat. He was upside down on one hand on a unicycle, and there was a string band balanced on one of his feet, and there was an accordionist on an impossible acrobatic. And on the other side of the stage, way over here, was just a tall, blonde girl with big breasts, just standing there. And every head in the audience was riveted toward the...
Call that cheesecake, yes.
The blonde, with the big breasts. Nobody looking at the impossible acrobat. That's what I call the take-home lesson.
Take-home lesson.
Laura, you want to get in the last question or two for our first interview with Barry? Barry said, we got half an hour for this first interview. We're coming back. What would you like to ask or tell Barry?
Barry,
then I have something to say.
I'm very, very happy to hear these stories that you shared, and they're so close to my heart that it's so nostalgic meeting you and hearing this. You brought back such memories professionally in my own life, Barry, because I can share these stories. The little time I had when I went on the road with the circus is a special memory I'm always going to have in my life. And then having this opportunity with you is just wonderful, and I want to thank you. And you made it come to life, and I just thank you so much, Barry.
That's very kind of you, my delight.
For me, all I can say is, you see why I love him?
Oh,
you see?
Bless your heart.
See?
Continue good things to you all.
We're just getting warmed up.
We're just getting
We're going to have Barry back on our show many times, and we'll all be riding unicycles together, but not across the Grand Canyon and not between the World Trade Centers.
But across this road right there.
That I can handle that.
May all your days be circus days.
Yay!
Happy trails, as Roy Rogers would say.
So we want to thank all our viewers for watching and listening, and we want to thank the Barry Farber, the longest running radio talk show host in U.S. history, for being the first guest on our show since I'm stateside in New York from Jerusalem. Thank you very much.
I wish you a lot of good fortune, and I predict the same.
Thank you, Barry. It was an honor.